So currently, to win the game, you must defeat all 5 monarchs, and in all honesty, it's not an easy thing to achieve. The monarchs are all level 100, and so you have to survive the day-to-day struggles before you can actually think about truly becoming a force to be reckoned with. All your warriors have a daily wage and intake. Now both these values are static and currently don't change. So basically you need to go out on expeditions in order to gather the food and crowns to sustain your company. If either of these requirements are not met, morale will be reduced by 25%. And when morale reaches 0%, at the end of the following week, one random combatant will leave. Or I should say one random warrior will leave. After that, at the end of each consecutive week, one random warrior will continue to leave until morale is above 0% again. And this is where I'll also mention that if you end up having no members in your company, then that will result in the player's defeat. In addition to managing the day-to-day needs of your company, you also need to prepare for the eventuality of getting sieged. So sieges occur every 30 weeks, and that's when the monarchs will launch an assault on your base. Currently there is no siege map though, or specific siege missions with unique mechanics, but basically you can think of it as your warriors sallying out of the village to meet the enemy on the field. When a siege does occur, you can't go on any expeditions, so you need to deal with the siege first. And basically at the top of the interface where your company name is, there will be a button that says under siege, and you just click on that button and then it will load into the siege. Sometimes it glitches out if you have opened a few menus before it, so you kind of just need to keep clicking it or click right onto the text and that will load into the mission. And then after you have dealt with the siege, only then can you go on an expedition. And also, if you are defeated in that siege, but you still have at least one warrior left in reserve, then it's not game over. Your buildings are just damaged, and so all your upgraded buildings are reduced by 1 level. So the basic gameplay loop is you choose a building you want to upgrade, you then pick a biome that you want to fight in based on what building you want to upgrade, as each biome offers its own unique resources. And then when you complete the expedition, you get XP and you get loot, which in turn make your warriors stronger. And then you also use those resources that you get from the expedition to upgrade your buildings, which then provide further support. And then on top of that, there is another layer. So on the same expeditions that you go on, there's a small chance that you may encounter a monarch. Now sometimes it's good because you might be purposely trying to hunt down a monarch, and sometimes that's bad because, especially during the early game, the monarchs are extremely strong and they'll more or less be one-shotting your warriors. So you kind of need to find a balance. Generally the monarchs have a really low chance of spawning on any of the expeditions, but the higher difficulty that you go on, the higher the chance that the monarchs will spawn. But overall, the chance of a monarch spawning is still low. That said, over time, the enemy will only get stronger, so sieges will become harder as the enemy will get more numerous, and the levels of the enemies that you're facing will also gradually increase. So basically, the longer that you put off killing the monarchs, the harder the game will get. As you are conducting your expeditions in the various biomes, over time, new enemies will be introduced into each faction, and the faction's overall strategy will change. Every time you meet a new enemy, they will be added into the bestiary. Now the bestiary is also combined with the general information on the game, so for argument's sake I've just called it the glossary, and you can access the glossary by clicking the question mark button towards the top right hand corner of the screen. And you also need to balance the size of your party or the size of your company against the availability of missions. Missions above the difficulty of level 1 cost crowns and money in order to fund the expeditions. But obviously those expeditions are also more rewarding. Yeah, but at the same time, the risks are drastically increased as the difficulty progresses closer towards 10. And sometimes failing those missions can set you back because you might have invested a lot of food and crowns into the mission hoping that you'd make it back, but instead you had to retreat or you just got completely wiped out. And also, if you hire too many warriors in a short span of time, you might find yourself having to take on high level missions just to get enough food to sustain your company. Yet the warriors that you were fielding in those missions are not strong enough to fight the enemies. And this is where I'll just make a quick point that every now and then food will be available on the marketplace. So if you find yourself with excess crowns, then you can always spend a little bit of money on food from the marketplace just to keep you going. Now, there's also another point. Just remember that emerging victorious, or in other words, completing a mission, will also reward 25% morale. So even if you're at 0%, so long as you continue to emerge victorious during the same week that your morale hit 0%, your company may be able to stick together long enough to scrape through, because you're basically offsetting through each victory. So you're hitting 0% and then you're completing a mission on the same week, going back up to 25%, and then when you end the week, at the start of the new week, you go back down to 0%. So long as you continue to emerge victorious, you can kind of at least force your company to stay together. But the moment you lose that mission and you end the week on 0%, then that's when your company will start falling apart. But you also need to remember that when you're fighting battles with 0 morale, your abilities, your weapon skills are all completely disabled, so you have to rely on your basic attacks, and you need to exploit elevation and flanking to the best of your abilities. And then if you lose a mission, you will lose minus 25% morale. Now, let's dive into the buildings. So this is the headquarters building. This is the interface that you will be interacting with in order to trigger and load into the missions. Here you can see the mission difficulty. The first 2 difficulties will always be available, with the last mission offering scaling between level 3 and 10. And then when you click on a mission, it will reveal all the details, such as what resources you'll find and the other rewards that you could get, like weapons, cultural equipment, or enchanted rings. Now, the exact amounts are not revealed, but the basic rule is that the harder the difficulty is, the more of the resource you'll get. And also mineral materials from lower difficulties, as in the stuff that you use to craft your equipment, will always be rewarded in difficulties above it. For example, if you do a level 1 mission, you are rewarded with iron, and if you do a level 2 mission, although it doesn't specify that you will get iron as well, you will get both iron and steel. And so this is the barracks building. It's basically the interface that you'll use to organize your party. You can drag and drop members into active or reserve slots. So any combatant that's in the active panel will be participating in combat, and any combatant that's in the reserves won't be. And basically you just click on a portrait, and then you can just drag it across, as you can see here. The other thing is that you can reorganize the position, but this basically lets you keep track of the warriors in your party. Like for instance, I prefer to group all my archers into one row and then all my warriors into the second row. It makes it easier to interact with them when I need to do things like purchase equipment, um, since I know that the first row is all going to be archers, or the first three are going to be archers. That way I can subconsciously navigate through the interface faster. That said, there is still some quirks with the UI. So basically, the changes that you make in the barracks building, they're not mirrored in the vault or in the inventory user interface, which is where you can also do the drag and drop with the combatants. So basically, if you make a change in the barracks building via drag and drop, so you're sorting out your combatants based on stats. Say for example, you want to group all your archers that have high focus into the first 3 slots. You then need to also do that in the vault building as well. That's just as I said, one of those quirks that hopefully I'll eventually fix. Now, moving on, so in the vault interface, this is where you also be able to equip your warriors. So basically, by clicking on a portrait, you are selecting that warrior that you want to equip things on. You can equip by dragging and dropping onto the right equipment slot, or you can also just right click on whatever item that you want to equip. Just bear in mind that most items also have level requirements, so if you're trying to equip something that you don't have the level for, then you won't be able to equip it. And so to unequip items, you basically just drag it off the equipment slot. This applies to everything except for body armors. You can't just drag the clothes off someone because no one likes to be naked. So if there's a specific item that you want, you need to swap it out. So you need to swap the current body armor that he's wearing with another body armor that's in your inventory. Now, this is the arena building, and I won't be covering too much detail in this because right now it's not fully implemented. But basically, when the perk system drops, this is where you'll be assigning all the different perks, and the interface works similar to like the barracks or the vault, in that you've got these portraits and you just click on the portrait and that selects the character, and that allows you to acquire the perks that you want to acquire on that specific character. But for now, what you can do in this interface is you can view the abilities that your warrior has based on whatever weapon he has equipped. And so now we've arrived to an extremely important building. So this is the temple. Now, the temple is the only way that you can heal condition, and condition is an extremely important factor. So basically all combatants have condition, and each battle that you take them on will reduce condition by 1. So when condition hits 0, condition basically disables the weapon abilities on that character with 0 condition and halves the AP. So the only thing that you can really use are one-handed weapons. Now, I believe I mentioned in the previous videos that when you have 0 condition, you can still use basic attacks. That's true, but it actually only applies to one-handed weapons because all two-handed weapons require 12 AP. So generally what I do is I will rush to upgrade the temple first. I'll go straight to the plains and I'll do a couple missions there to get some oak that will then be used to upgrade the temple, and that way I can restore the condition, or I can restore the strength of at least 3 to 4 characters each week. And then by that time I've already stabilized the party, and then the next thing I'll do is I'll go and upgrade the headquarters building, because upgrading the headquarters building will reduce the cost requirement for missions, so you'll be able to reduce the amount of gold and food cost for missions. And the temple building is the only place where you can repair your equipment, like your helmet and your armor. So it is very important to keep track of the helmet and armor stats of your warriors, because the helmet and armor stats are basically the durability of that item. And going into battle without a helmet is, as I've mentioned previously, extremely dangerous, because if they attack your head, they'll be doing bonus damage, and most weapons have enough damage to kill a low level warrior outright. And now we have arrived to the arena building. Basically this is the place where you purchase all your warriors. As you upgrade the building, more warriors will join and their levels will increase as well, but the price is always static, but the price will scale also to the level of the warriors. To purchase a warrior, you basically just click on the portrait, and then underneath the biography you'll see two buttons, cancel or purchase. You click purchase to purchase and cancel to cancel. And just one thing that I mentioned now is that while you've got these two buttons equipped, you can't select any other portraits. You need to cancel out first and then click another portrait. Again, this is just one of those UI quirks. And this is the marketplace. So basically, as you upgrade the marketplace, the value that you buy items at will decrease, and the value of the items that you're selling will increase. And so at level 0, you're getting a pretty shitty deal. And so buying and selling is pretty straightforward. The left panel is you, so this is where your item's at, and the right panel is the buyer. You're basically just dragging and dropping items between the two panels, or you can right click as well. Now the last thing I'll go over is how to upgrade buildings. So basically in the left and right hand corners, these panels will indicate how much material you currently have. So on the left, it's materials for crafting equipment like swords, helmets, shields and armor, and on the right it's materials for upgrading buildings. And to access the upgrade menu, you basically just click the plus button over here. Now this UI functions more or less similar to the mission selection menu or the workshop menu. And so these panels here will tell you what level you are upgrading to, but if you click onto the actual icon, it'll show you what your current level is, and it will also list all the details on what that building provides and the upgrades that it will provide. And also it will also list the requirements and the amount of weeks that it will take until it will become fully upgraded. And so basically, in order to progress time forward, you need to click the end week button. When you click it, it will progress time forward by 1 week. That more or less wraps up everything for the entire tutorial. Dead Monarchy is bound to change, so eventually I'll probably be revisiting these tutorials and redoing them once significant changes have been made. But for now, that more or less wraps up everything, so until next time.